And joining us now with his reaction is the host of the Michael Knowles Show, Michael Knowles. Michael, what say you about that?
Well, you know how I can tell Chuck Todd is lying is that his mouth is moving. Chuck Todd says there is no left-wing media bias. Chuck Todd began his own career as a Democrat political operative. The numbers don't lie. We know that 7% of journalists identify as Republicans. 90% of network news coverage of President Trump is negative. 96% of 2016 political donations from journalists benefited Hillary Clinton. Those numbers don't lie. Chuck Todd does. And now he's telling big tech to lie because big tech has already admitted their left-wing bias. Jack Dorsey of Twitter admitted his bias 2 weeks ago.
Okay, but it's strong to say that Chuck Todd is lying. I mean, I'm not sure he's lying. He may be in the denial about the problems that the mainstream media has with bias, but I think it's a stretch to say he's lying.
Respectfully, Ed, I think he is lying. I think he knows all of those numbers about the bias, and he's covering them up. And I think that he knows that big tech has admitted their own bias. We know that the news curators at Facebook admitted that they regularly covered up conservative stories and suppressed them. We know that they regularly boosted left-wing stories. And this is hurting their bottom line. I think that's the big point here, which is that when you go woke, you go broke. And for the first time ever, Facebook's usership has declined this year. For the first time, Twitter's usership has dropped dramatically.
And pardon me one second. Ahead of the testimony, to your point, Jack Dorsey was doing that media tour. He talked to our own Sean Hannity. He talked to Lester Holt at NBC and acknowledged that they've had a bias to the left and that they're trying to do something. Here's what he said on Twitter. "We acknowledge our responsibility and commit to greater accountability. I plan to share our learnings and the proactive measures we're taking. We're going to listen, learn, and engage in any practical ideas we hear on how to improve together, looking forward to the conversation." Okay, on one hand, maybe that's sincere. On the other hand, it might have been written by some PR person saying, hey, we're going to have a conversation. What are they going to actually do about bias, and will these lawmakers finally pin them down?
That's right. It's just words, words, words until they actually do something about it. I hope that the lawmakers on Capitol Hill can pin them down, but I think that big tech should take a look at their own bottom lines because they're more than willing, they're more than able to follow the mainstream media down this path of censoring conservatives, of denigrating half of the country. But if they do, they're going to wind up like the mainstream media, which is to say, largely tuned out and irrelevant.
And what about Congress finally pressing these tech giants on the algorithm? They always fall back on, well, we've got these algorithms complicated, and they won't tell us the actual formula. So it seems to me that at least sometimes they hide behind that to blame the algorithms for why you see certain things in your Facebook feed over other things.
That's exactly right. The big issue here is transparency. We're not asking them to become big conservatives all of a sudden. We just want some transparency. And that's where the lawmakers can come in, because big tech has always said we're an open platform, we're not publishers, we shouldn't be regulated like publishers. But if they're curating, if they're suppressing conservative views, if they're boosting left-wing views, then they're behaving like publishers, and they should be regulated as such.
Yeah, and so moving forward, I think you're making a very important point here, which is the tech giants have told us for so long, the whole idea of Twitter, the whole idea of Facebook, I thought in part was not just connecting, but transparency. People telling you about their lives. You're getting to see records, wide open, and they're taking you behind the scenes and all of that. And yet when we want to know about the algorithms, all of a sudden we're in the dark. They tell us they can't tell us.
That's exactly right. The whole aspect of social media that has so benefited our discourse is that it finally cracked up the monopoly of the mainstream media. It allowed people to get their views, whatever those views may be, out, unvarnished, undistorted. Big tech now is changing that, and it's a real shame.
We'll be watching this testimony closely. Michael Knowles, thanks for the preview.